A big Thursday welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream. Appreciate being with us on this Thursday as we are with you Thursday on this Thursday, December 10th, 2020, Tuesday through Friday, our normal show hours, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live and available on demand at youtube.com/lcpios, keeping you connected with student athletes, coaches, different members from the Lewis and Clark College community, and our alumni base as well. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Goff. I'm the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark, the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, and a member of NCAA Division III with institutions from across the nation, over 430 competing at the NCAA Division III level, and a member of the Northwest Conference, 9 teams from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington. Lewis and Clark consisting of 19 intercollegiate athletic programs, with our campus just 6 miles from downtown Portland. Excited to have Coach Ange Dendas with us in just a few moments, the head strength and conditioning coach for Lewis and Clark. And as we've been doing with most of our guests, and especially with the coaches that we've had, just getting a summary now as we move into the middle part of December, a summary of the fall 2020 semester's finals start over the course of this next weekend. And so it's kind of a time to look back and see how everything went, and especially with Coach Ange too, because the last time she was on our show, we were talking about what the plan was for fall 2020, and at that time, it was difficult to know exactly concretely what we were up against as well. We invite you to get in touch with the show. You can do so using our Facebook Live comments. You can do that at Facebook Live in our comments there, or email us sports@lclark.edu anytime, an opportunity to get connected with the show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram, our handle on both of those platforms, available at LC Pioneers. We keep you connected with different things going on in the Lewis and Clark athletics community. And one thing that you can do right now is go to lcpioneers.com. That is our website, and there's a link to schedule a virtual visit. Right now, our admissions group offering virtual interviews. There is a link to a YouTube video where you can watch different pieces of a campus tour. There's a lot of good ways to stay connected with our Lewis and Clark College community, even though we can't all be together right now on campus. And then we do encourage you to check out the top story there. Mathematics and chemistry double major named Rhodes finalist. This is Jordan Gonzalez, a pitcher for Lewis and Clark baseball, a senior academically, and we've had Jordan on the show prior. In fact, there's a link to his lcpioneers.com live appearance in the story. It's definitely a cool thing to check out because all 3 of Lewis and Clark's Rhodes scholars have been student athletes, and now Jordan is the latest finalist to be added to a pretty awesome list of accomplishments by Lewis and Clark students. And of course, as I mentioned, YouTube is active with our most recent episodes of lcpioneers.com live. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can certainly do so on our YouTube page, youtube.com/lcpios. So let's bring in our guest for today. We're talking to the head strength and conditioning coach for Lewis and Clark Athletics. A great chance to catch up with Ange Dendas. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us on this Thursday, Coach Ange. And we've been kind of opening fall 2020 interviews with this question just to get a feel for how things have been for you. How are things going in Coach Ange's world?
Oh, well, first off, thanks Ryan for having me. Things are good. I I am recovering from the the long fall. It felt like a long week, even though it was 10 weeks. It felt like a long week with the kids on campus. And so definitely taking some time to just decompress and work from home a bit and spend some family time around the holidays. So I'm doing good.
Well, and I've mentioned this numerous times when I've talked about your contributions to Lewis and Clark athletics. I mean, it really is unique to have a head coach who's involved with all 19 programs, and I'm sure that that was super helpful over the course of the fall 2020 semester. We've asked head coaches and student athletes, what did fall practices look like for you? In your case, what did fall workouts look like for strength and conditioning?
Yeah, it definitely different than what we are kind of used to. And I think last time we talked, we didn't even really know where we were going to be in terms of once August hit and then when September came. So it definitely feels like a lifetime ago of planning, what can happen and what basically we were able to do. I think, really benefited our student athletes. We were able to train in our facility, obviously in a limited capacity due to COVID regulations. in terms of how many people we can have in there, how we needed to sanitize everything as we're going through our day.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts. Because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.
Thank you for watching lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, and we're joined today by head strength and conditioning coach Ange Dendas on the show. And coach, I think we ran into a little audio technical issue in the middle of that second question, so let's kind of pick up where you left off, talking about kind of the fall 2020 and some of the adjustments that had to be made for strength and conditioning.
Yeah, like I was saying, we were able to put together, I was able to rearrange the facility, try to open things up a bit more. It's the first time you really had to think about, okay, if you need to go and clean off your squat rack, do you need to walk across the room to get the sanitizing stuff, or should it be right next to it? And so we were able to get in a little bit early before the kids showed up, to make those adjustments so that we had a safe space to train all year was great. And the kids did a great job of really taking ownership of the room, and making sure they were leaving it clean and ready to go for the next group coming in. So we were able to do 3 days a week with most of our teams, which is great. Especially those teams that typically are going to be competing in the fall: football, volleyball, soccer, cross country. We were really able to take a training approach to get better. Um, and so that was something I was really proud of, that I was able to do, for our student athletes.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you were able to provide some of our student athletes at Lewis and Clark as non-pandemic of an experience as you were able to do during a pandemic time, because it's always good to have kind of those anchor points. And as I mentioned, you're the only head coach that works with all 19 of our intercollegiate teams, joined by head coach of strength and conditioning at Lewis and Clark, Ange Dendas, today on the show. Give us an idea then, what's on your mind as you approach spring 2021, because much like we talked about in July, we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like yet, but there's lots of scenarios. Just kind of what's on your mind when it comes to your approach.
Yeah. there's a lot of scenarios that can happen. There's a lot of moving pieces that are going to really determine what we're going to be able to do. Luckily, with how well the fall went for us, we have that kind of as okay, if we get the all clear to go again, we have a plan. Now, if there's going to be some limitations, I don't know if a lot of people know, but right now in Multnomah County, indoor um, training gyms are closed, across the county. Um, and so we're going to have to kind of wait and see how that plays out as we get closer to January. But, if it's not a possibility to be open in terms of the weight room inside, we'll we'll find a way to make it so our kids have a great experience, whether that's um, partially outside, whether it's limited numbers, if it goes even to that direction. We were limited numbers in the fall, which really didn't change a whole lot in terms of programming for a lot of our teams. Just kind of made me work a little more hours to make sure I was able to see everybody every day. But definitely playing with some scenarios to make sure we're prepared when the new year comes around.
Well, and that is a great opportunity for me to say thank you. You have worked as hard as anyone I know on that campus trying to get things ready for our teams, and we're certainly appreciative of the effort that you put out, which honestly is not unlike a non-pandemic time, because you work so hard to make the experience great for our student athletes. Talk about your approach just in general to the role of head strength and conditioning coach and that responsibility to be working with over 300 student athletes.
Yeah, it's they say it's not for everybody. You got to kind of have some strong willpower. You got to really be kind of selfless, because my time has to be to prepare our athletes to be ready for competition. And so that's going to take the time that I have to really pour in to what they're doing to make sure we're ready. And so even with the pandemic, the overall goals are still the same. We still want to be prepared to compete, and we want to be healthy when we're doing it, and we want to stay healthy. So we're, if outcome and performance is going to be, our main focus, that's going to be whether there's a pandemic going on or not. And so, our kids did a great job of really buying into, okay, let's really, push where we can. Uh, let's get in, training hours. It was really just getting into the weight room and getting those training hours docked, um, because we were so spread out. Some kids had access to gyms over the summer, some didn't. And so we were really on this wide spectrum of physically, where are we at in the beginning of September. And I can say, the end of or the middle of November, a lot of our kids are ready to compete. And so that's going to be their approach going in to the spring as well. Are we going to be ready to compete? Hopefully, they're doing some stuff what they can right now over winter break. So we'll kind of see how everyone shows back up. I think hopefully this break isn't as long as our summer. We're talking about 5 months of limited disruptive training, which any strength coach knows. Um, everything that you kind of worked for prior to the pandemic hitting was probably gone in terms of adaptations in the body. So hopefully this break is a little bit shorter and we're able to get rolling when we get back.
You bring up an interesting thing that I maybe hadn't even thought of. I've thought about it from the perspective of trying to find practice schedules and ways that as the teams get together in the fall are trying to figure out what their practice is going to look like, knowing that there may not be a game to prepare for as fall sports competition was suspended until January 1st. You mentioned that gap. You normally your workout plans or the things that you've drawn up probably over your whole career are set for 3-month breaks or a certain set time. And now that all of a sudden got extended, what kind of work did you have to put in to adjust the plan as you approached mid-March and into the later part of the spring last year?
Um, it kind of was like just like a whirlwind, right? Because everything every week was changing. Um, I could send out workouts that had weights in it. We're talking the use of barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells. And then I was getting emails and texts from our kids saying, "Hey, our gym just got shut down. We lost access to our high school. We can't run at the park that we normally do. What could we do, in our front yard?" And so you're really having to be um, able to adjust kind of on the fly. And you kind of go back to, for me, it was going back to like the basics for a lot of our teams of, do you have a place to sprint? Do you have a place to jump? Doing those kind of basic things that uh, aren't aren't fancy, aren't maybe the cool hip thing you're seeing on social media of pro athletes doing, but in reality, it's the things that your body needs to keep kind of what it's been working for. So getting in sprint work, getting in a lot of jumps, different plyometric work was a way for us to really keep our strength and our body's ability to produce power. That's something that you lose when the weight room's taken away.
As we mentioned, still up in the air on what spring 2021 will look like exactly. Of course, we're keeping you informed at lcpioneers.com/COVID. A lot of moving parts, NCAA, Northwest Conference involved, and then certainly, as Coach Ange talked about earlier in the interview, state, local, and county regulations. But that said, I'm curious, have you seen any outrageous gym setups that people have adapted to because you can't have the normal space? You have to have more space. It has to have 3 open walls. When you've just been scouting what your peers and other people are doing, what have you found?
Yeah, actually, a lot over the fall, seeing from colleagues, of training outside. They weren't even able to be inside. So I feel very fortunate that we were able to have our entire facility um, for the entire time we were there on campus. So we didn't have to really move a whole lot outside. We didn't have to set up tents. We didn't have to take over other space. That you're seeing an old gymnasium being turned into a weight room to accommodate numbers. Um, One, we don't have that, right? But yeah, just from everything, just every day having to set up your equipment outside, just the amount of time and effort and energy. A lot of respect to my colleagues that had to do it to get their job done. Fortunate enough that I was here at LC that we didn't have to really go that far uh, for the fall.
Well, certainly hope that everything goes as well in the fall as the spring. Again, kudos to you and everything that you did to prepare and execute for that experience for our students in the fall, and looking forward to welcoming people back in the spring in whatever way it's going to look like. Coach Ange Dendas, you're absolutely the best. We absolutely love you and certainly appreciate you joining us today on lcpioneers.com live.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Roll Piles.
That's Coach Ange joining us on the show. And yeah, I mean, adapt, adjust, and overcome. I mean, I've heard that phrase said many times in the world of sports. And I mean, Coach Ange was doing everything from figuring out the logistics of the weight room and trying to provide student athletes at Lewis and Clark as good of a pandemic experience that they might expect in a non-pandemic experience, right? She worked really hard doing that, all the while adjusting to all those moving targets. And as we mentioned, lcpioneers.com/COVID is our website that's specifically focusing on things that we are sharing that are coming from the world of like the NCAA, the Northwest Conference, and all those county or state regulations that affect just Lewis and Clark athletics. And a lot of times those things spread to the college at large. So we have a link to the Lewis and Clark College ongoing COVID-19 response too, because it is a little bit of a moving target, especially during the breaks. And so she has worked super hard to that, adjusting facility schedules, working with Sharon Sexton, our associate athletic director as well, to figure out everything that we need to do to keep our facilities available as much as we're able to do to our student athletes, our student body, to the faculty and staff. It was definitely an interesting fall, and I commend her tremendously for everything that she was able to do, and I appreciate her giving us some insight today on the show. One more live show this week. We'll catch up with class of 2012 baseball alumnus. Michael Ball will join us on the show tomorrow. Still finalizing our guest list for the following week, but of course you can go to youtube.com/LCPIO, see all of our past shows, and have a chance to suggest future shows as well by going to sports@lclark.edu. And what I will tell you too is once we have that list finalized, we'll post it at lcpioneers.com/live, which takes you to Facebook Live. And so we can show you who our guests will be next week. And then we'll have 2 weeks after that off and return with the first week of January having more live shows, as lcpioneers.com live now into its 40th or so week of live shows dating back to the last day of March. But the reason we continue to do it is to keep you connected with our student athletes, our coaches like Coach Ange, alumni, and different members of our community, because it has been truly fun to hear all of the effort that our staff, our faculty, our students put in, even during non-pandemic times. It's a rigorous effort by everybody to get things done, and we're certainly appreciative of that and hearing the hard work that pays off for many of our students who go on to do amazing things impacting people. So thanks to you for joining us on the show today. We'll see you again tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on the show. I'm Ryan Goff. Thanks to Coach Ange for joining us. Thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you again soon for more of the show. Goodbye, everybody.
Hi, I'm Nick Lombardi. Something I've learned at Winterim this year is how to communicate a vision.
My biggest takeaway from Winterim is probably the networking. Getting to talk to everybody, connect with people for the future is one of the most valuable things, and I did Winterim last year, came back for more this year.
I think a way in which my liberal arts education has really helped me and my group formulate our ideas is that concept of critical thinking and having many different backgrounds. Me being an econ major and my two group mates being chemistry majors, we really get that well-rounded background, well-rounded ideas.
I think overall it's absolutely worth doing. You find yourself not only being more prepared for, say, this next semester, on top of being more prepared for life in general.